It was broad daylight on a busy city street. Cars moved slowly. People crossed the road. The sun reflected off glass buildings. A police officer stood near the sidewalk controlling traffic. His voice was loud. His tone was aggressive. Everyone nearby could hear him. Then a man stepped forward calmly. No rush. No fear. No attitude. It was Steven Seagal. He wore simple clothes. Nothing flashy. No bodyguards. No attention-seeking behavior. He raised his hand slightly and spoke in a calm voice. He only wanted to ask a question. The officer turned suddenly. Anger filled his face. He took one step closer. People stopped walking. Something felt wrong. Before anyone could react, the officer swung his fist. The punch landed hard. Right in front of everyone. Silence exploded across the street. A woman gasped. A man dropped his phone. Someone shouted. Cameras came out instantly. Phones pointed forward. Every second was recorded. Steven Seagal did not fall. He did not shout. He did not fight back. He stood still. Eyes steady. Face calm. That reaction alone confused everyone. The officer expected fear. He expected resistance. He expected chaos. Instead he saw control. For a moment the officer smiled. He thought he had won. He thought he had shown power. But power does not always shout. Seconds passed. The crowd grew quiet. The officer noticed something change. People were not looking at Steven anymore. They were looking at him. A senior officer across the street froze. His face went pale. He whispered something into his radio. The air felt heavy. Steven slowly adjusted his jacket. Still silent. Still calm. That was when the officer felt it. That deep sinking feeling. That something was very wrong. The truth was coming. And it was coming fast. In a moment everything would change. The badge. The authority. The confidence. All of it was about to collapse. Because the man he had just punched was not an ordinary civilian. And the regret that followed would hit harder than the punch ever did. It was still daytime. The sun sat high above the city. Light reflected off shop windows. Traffic moved slowly through the intersection. The street was busy. Office workers walked past. Vendors shouted prices. Cars honked without patience. Police Officer Miller stood in the middle of it all. Uniform pressed. Badge shining. Mood dark. He had been on duty since early morning. Heat irritated him. Noise annoyed him. Every small delay felt personal. To him control meant dominance. Authority meant obedience. He waved cars forward aggressively. Shouted at drivers. Pointed fingers at pedestrians. Most people obeyed silently. Some avoided eye contact. Others crossed the street quickly. No one wanted trouble. Then Steven Seagal arrived. No sirens. No entourage. No announcement. He walked slowly along the sidewalk. Calm posture. Relaxed shoulders. Eyes scanning the street. He looked like an ordinary man. Simple jacket. Worn shoes. Nothing that demanded attention. People passed him without noticing. He did not mind. Steven stopped near the barricade. The road ahead was blocked. He needed directions. He waited patiently. Watched the officer finish shouting at a driver. Then stepped forward. "Officer, excuse me." His voice was calm. Respectful. Measured. Officer Miller turned sharply. Already irritated. "This area is closed. Move back." Steven nodded. "I understand. I only need to ask something." The officer stepped closer. "Too close. Did you not hear me? I said move." Steven did not raise his voice. He did not step back. He stayed where he was. "I will move after you answer." That was enough to trigger the officer. Crowds nearby slowed down. Something felt tense. A shopkeeper leaned forward. A woman stopped mid-step. Steven was not challenging authority. He was challenging disrespect. Officer Miller saw defiance, not calm. He tightened his fists, chest rising, jaw locked. You people think you can say anything because you wear confidence. Steven remained still, eyes focused, breathing steady. I believe respect works both ways. That sentence changed everything. The officer snapped. This was not about traffic anymore. It was about ego. Nearby officers noticed but did not intervene. They assumed it was routine. Steven stood alone, unprotected, unarmed, but not afraid. People watching sensed imbalance. Not in strength, in control. Steven had it. The officer did not. The sun continued shining. Life moved on around them. Yet this small moment began to grow. Phones slowly came out. Not to record drama, but to be ready. The officer pointed at Steven. You need to learn your place. Steven replied quietly. Everyone deserves one. The crowd felt it. A strange stillness. Backhand index pointing right. Comment below. Have you ever seen power mistaken for arrogance? The officer took one step closer. The distance disappeared. And the setup was complete. The next moment would change everything. The air felt tight, heavy, uncomfortable. People nearby stopped pretending not to watch. Every eye turned toward the officer and the calm man in front of him. Officer Miller's patience was gone. His face flushed. His breathing rough. Authority was slipping. And he could feel it. Steven Seagal stood still. Hands relaxed. Body loose. Eyes steady. He did not look angry. He did not look scared. That calm made the officer angrier. You think you are special. You think rules do not apply to you. Steven spoke softly. Rules exist to protect people, not humiliate them. That sentence cut deep. The officer laughed loudly. A forced laugh. A dangerous laugh. You want to teach me my job? A few people stepped back. Instinct kicked in. A senior officer across the street glanced over, then turned away. No one intervened. The moment stretched. Steven did not move. He did not provoke. He did not challenge. He simply stood his ground. The officer stepped closer. So close their shoulders almost touched. This is your last warning. Steven replied calmly. There is no warning needed. That was it. The officer lost control. His fist came out fast. Fueled by ego. Fueled by frustration. The punch landed. Hard. A sharp sound echoed through the street. Time slowed. A woman screamed. A man shouted. Someone dropped their phone. Steven's head turned slightly, but his feet stayed planted. He did not fall. He did not stumble. That shocked everyone. The officer froze for a split second. He expected resistance. He expected fear. He expected collapse. None came. Steven straightened slowly. Eyes locked on the officer. No rage. No threat. Just disappointment. That reaction unsettled the crowd. Whispers spread quickly. Did you see that? He did not even react. The officer felt a strange chill. Something was wrong. But pride pushed him forward. You want another? Steven spoke quietly, almost gently. Violence reveals weakness, not strength. The officer clenched his jaw, hands shaking. People around began recording openly now. Phones raised, cameras steady. This was no longer a traffic stop. This was a public failure. A nearby officer finally noticed. He stepped forward, then stopped. He recognized the face. His eyes widened. That is. He went silent. Steven turned slightly, not toward the officer who hit him, but toward the crowd. He raised one hand. A simple gesture. Calm. Controlled. The crowd quieted. That calm was louder than shouting. Officer Miller noticed the change. The silence. The looks. Fear crept in. He had crossed a line. And deep down, he knew it. His radio crackled. Unanswered. Sweat rolled down his temple. Steven adjusted his jacket, straightened his posture. Still no anger. That frightened the officer more than rage ever could. The conflict was no longer physical. It was psychological. The officer stood exposed, badge shining, authority cracking. The crowd waited. Something was coming, and the officer could feel it. This punch, this moment, would not disappear. It was about to define him, and he had no idea who he had just struck. The truth was seconds away, and it would hit much harder than his fist ever did. Part 4, 700 words. Part 4, Reaction. The street no longer felt loud. It felt empty. Cars slowed. Horns stopped. Footsteps faded. Everyone sensed the shift. Steven Seagal stood quietly, the punch still fresh, yet his posture unchanged. Officer Miller stepped back slightly, not by choice, by instinct. His chest rose and fell fast. His confidence leaked away. People watched closely now. No whispers, no laughter, only tension. A nearby vendor stopped selling. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve. Phones stayed raised. Steven looked around slowly, not searching for sympathy, not seeking attention. He simply observed. That calm unsettled everyone. Officer Miller tried to speak. Words caught in his throat. This is procedure. This is standard. The excuses sounded weak, even to him. A senior officer across the street stared openly now. Recognition hit him hard. He whispered to another officer. Their faces changed. One shook his head. The other reached for a radio. Steven noticed none of it, or pretended not to. He fixed his sleeve, straightened his jacket. Small actions, big presence. The crowd felt it. This man carried weight. Not physical, not loud. Something deeper. Officer Miller felt eyes on him. Not admiring, not fearful, judging. The power dynamic had flipped. He had thrown a punch, but lost control. A woman spoke quietly. That man is not ordinary. A man nodded. Look at him. Steven finally spoke again, his voice steady. You chose force because you felt small. The words were not angry. They were factual. Officer Miller flinched. I was doing my job. Steven met his eyes. No, you were protecting your ego. That sentence landed harder than any blow. The officer's face flushed, hands trembling. Around them, people stepped closer. Not threatening, just witnessing. This moment mattered. A patrol car pulled up slowly. Doors stayed closed. Two officers inside watched. Confused, concerned. Steven took a step back, giving space. A sign of restraint, not weakness. The crowd noticed. Respect grew. Officer Miller wiped sweat from his brow. His radio crackled again. He did not answer. The senior officer finally walked over. His boots sounded loud in the silence. He stopped beside Miller, then looked at Steven. His eyes widened fully now. Sir. The word alone changed everything. Miller turned sharply. Fear flashed. Sir. That word did not belong here. Not for a civilian. The senior officer swallowed, then lowered his voice. Are you all right? Steven nodded once. I am. The crowd reacted. Soft murmurs. Surprise. Officer Miller stared, mind racing. Who was this man? Why the respect? Why the fear? Steven remained composed. Hands relaxed. The senior officer leaned closer to Miller, whispered something. Miller's face drained of color. He stepped back again, this time visibly. Steven watched quietly. No satisfaction, no pride, only disappointment. The reaction had spread, from one officer, to the crowd, to the entire street. Everyone felt it. Something big was unfolding, and the truth was no longer hidden. It was standing in front of them, calm, silent, unshaken. The next moment, would reveal everything. And Officer Miller knew. Whatever came next would change his life forever. The silence broke with the sound of tires stopping. A long black government vehicle pulled up beside the sidewalk. It did not rush. It did not honk. It simply arrived. The doors opened slowly. 2 men stepped out first. Dark suits. Clear earpieces. Serious faces. The crowd leaned in. Phones lifted higher. Then a 3rd man exited. Older. Confident. Authority in every step. He looked straight at Steven Seagal and walked toward him. Officer Miller felt his knees weaken. His mouth went dry. The senior officer beside him stiffened. He straightened instantly. The man in the suit stopped in front of Steven, lowered his head slightly. "Sir, we have been trying to reach you." "Sir." The word echoed. The crowd reacted. Gasp. Whispers. Shock. Officer Miller froze. His mind raced. "Sir." The man continued. "The briefing is ready. The department heads are waiting." Steven nodded calmly. "I was delayed." The official glanced briefly at Officer Miller, then back at Steven. "Is there a problem here?" Steven looked at the officer who had punched him. No anger. No accusation. Just a misunderstanding. That calm answer crushed Miller. The official turned toward the senior officer. "Do you know who this is?" The senior officer swallowed. "Yes, sir." He turned to Miller. "This is Steven Seagal, Federal Law Enforcement Advisor, Tactical Training Consultant, and Oversight Authority for today's operation." The words hit like thunder. Officer Miller staggered back. "No." His voice cracked. The crowd erupted. Shock spread instantly. "That is him. I recognize him now. He trains officers." Phones zoomed in. The truth was undeniable. Steven Seagal, the man he punched, was not just important. He was untouchable. Officer Miller's badge suddenly felt heavy. His uniform felt tight. He removed his cap slowly, hands shaking. "I did not know." Steven finally spoke, still calm. "That is exactly why this matters." The official looked displeased. Very displeased. This incident was recorded by civilians and by body cams. Miller's face drained completely. The senior officer stepped aside, creating space, creating distance. The power shift was complete. Steven took 1 step forward. Not threatening, not dramatic, controlled. "I came here to observe professionalism, not abuse of authority." The crowd watched silently. Every word mattered. The official nodded. "We will handle this immediately." Steven raised one hand. "Not yet." The official stopped. Steven turned to the crowd. Faces young and old, watching closely. Authority exists to protect, not to dominate. Officer Miller stood frozen, head down, backhand index pointing right. Comment below. Should someone like this be removed from duty, or given a second chance? Steven turned back to the official. "Begin the process." The official spoke into his radio. Clear. Firm. "Initiate internal review. Officer relieved of duty pending investigation." Those words ended everything. Miller's shoulders collapsed. The crowd felt it. Justice without shouting. Steven stepped back, returning control. The reveal was complete. The truth stood exposed. In daylight. In front of everyone. And the man who threw the punch finally understood. Some mistakes cannot be undone, especially when you forget who you are dealing with. The street remained quiet. Not shocked anymore. Not confused. It felt settled. Officer Miller stood still. Badge lowered. Cap in his hands. The confidence he carried earlier was gone, replaced by fear and shame. The senior officer guided him gently to the side. Not aggressive, not cruel, just firm. Miller tried to speak. His voice failed. "I made a mistake." Steven Seagal looked at him. Not with anger. Not with triumph. With clarity. Mistakes happen. But choices reveal character. Those words landed deeply. The official beside Steven nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the moment. This will follow procedure. Fair and transparent. Steven agreed. That is all I ask. The crowd watched, expecting punishment, expecting drama. Instead they saw accountability. Officer Miller straightened himself, took a breath. I crossed a line. I forgot why I wear this uniform. Steven listened, silent. The officer continued, voice shaking. I treated power like a weapon. Steven responded calmly. Power is a responsibility. When it becomes personal, it becomes dangerous. Those nearby nodded. Even officers. This was not humiliation. This was a lesson. The senior officer placed a hand on Miller's shoulder, guided him toward the patrol car. No handcuffs, no shouting, just consequence. The patrol car door opened. Miller paused. He turned back toward Steven. I am sorry. Steven nodded once. Learn from it. That was all. The door closed. The car drove away slowly. The crowd exhaled. A woman wiped her eyes. A man lowered his phone. Steven turned to the official. Ensure the footage is reviewed. Ensure training follows. The official replied. It will. Steven then turned to the senior officer. Your response mattered. The officer straightened. Thank you, sir. Steven shook his head gently. Thank your restraint. The tension faded. Traffic resumed. Cars moved. Life continued. But something had changed. People felt it. A lesson had unfolded in daylight. Steven stepped away from the center of attention, toward the sidewalk. No applause. No celebration. Just quiet respect. The crowd slowly dispersed, talking softly. That was powerful. He never raised his voice. Steven adjusted his jacket, walked calmly. The official followed briefly. We are ready when you are. Steven paused. Give me a moment. He looked down the street, at the same place where chaos began. Then he spoke quietly. This city deserves better examples. The official nodded. Steven finally walked toward the black vehicle. No rush. No pride, just purpose. As the door opened, a young officer nearby whispered, That is how authority should look. Steven heard it, and smiled faintly. The car pulled away. The street returned to normal. But the lesson stayed. Resolution did not come through force. It came through restraint. It did not humiliate. It corrected. And for Officer Miller, for the crowd, for every witness, this moment would not fade, because true justice does not shout, stands calm, and lets truth speak for itself. The city street slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Cars honked softly. Pedestrians moved along. Vendors resumed selling. But the memory of what happened lingered. People whispered to one another. What just happened here? Who is that man? Did you see how calm he was? Steven Seagal had left. Not with fanfare. Not with noise. But with a lesson far louder than any shout. The officer who punched him had been taken aside. Inside the patrol car. His hands rested on his knees. Head lowered. Mind racing. He replayed every second. Every movement. Every word. He realized that authority is more than a badge. More than a uniform. More than the ability to strike. True power is silent. True respect is earned, not demanded. Steven's calm presence had shown that. The senior officer who witnessed everything nodded quietly. A lesson in humility had unfolded before him. One he would not forget. One he would carry into his training sessions. Into every interaction with officers and civilians alike. Nearby, the crowd had started recording short clips on their phones. Some uploaded to social media instantly. Others shared with friends. The story would spread. Not because of a punch, but because of what happened afterward. A young woman standing on the sidewalk whispered. He didn't yell. He didn't attack back. Yet he taught a lesson stronger than any fight. That truth was clear. Disrespect can happen anywhere, even in broad daylight, even in front of cameras. But how you respond is what defines you. Steven had chosen patience, restraint, observation, and a quiet correction. Those around him realized respect is not about wealth, status, or fame. It is about how you treat others, especially when no one is watching, or when you think your actions go unnoticed. Backhand index pointing right. Comment below. Type respect if you believe humility is true strength. And tell me where you are watching from. Let's see how far this lesson can travel. The officer who had struck Steven finally understood. He could not undo his action, but he could learn from it. He could grow. He could ensure it never happened again. Steven's walk down the street had seemed ordinary, but the impact was extraordinary. Cameras, phones, and witnesses had captured everything. Yet the real lesson was in the silence, in the restraint, in the control. Authority is not about punching. It is about guiding, protecting, serving, and every civilian who saw the event knew it, even without knowing Steven's full title, even without understanding his exact influence. They understood respect, and humility, and power. True power does not need to shout. It does not need to dominate. It simply exists, quietly, with presence, with confidence, with integrity. As the sun continued its climb across the sky, the street gradually filled with noise again. Life moved on, but the lesson remained. Every officer who watched, every pedestrian who recorded, every witness who told the story, carried the memory forward. This was not just a viral moment. It was a teaching moment, a demonstration of what real authority looks like, and how quickly arrogance can be exposed. The moral was simple and timeless. Respect everyone, even when you believe no one is watching, because one day the person you underestimate could be the one you end up looking up to. Humility is strength, control is power, and calm presence can defeat aggression. Type respect if you believe in this lesson. Share it. Remember it. Because some lessons are louder than any fight, and some moments last longer than any punch. Steven Seagal had walked away quietly, but the lesson he left behind echoed far louder than words could ever convey. This street, this daytime scene, this single moment, would remain in memory as a reminder that true authority is earned through respect, through patience, through restraint. And the world needed more moments like this. Moments that taught people, not through violence, but through example. The camera angles, the phones, the whispers, all became part of a story that would live beyond one street, beyond one city, beyond one day. Respect is universal, and this lesson had proven it, louder than any shout could. The day ended, but the message remained, silent, strong, and unforgettable.